So now that we have some knowledge about what is nestjs and what we can expect, why don't we start building our first application using nestjs? So what I am going to do is create a simple quiz player to start with using Nest, and we will use a complete API based approach to do the development. So to get started with nestjs, or to install it, obviously we will need Node, which they say that it should be at least 10.13.0. So you need to ensure that you have that. Let me open up my terminal and see what version do I have. I have 12.15.0, which is good enough. Then you also need to install the CLI. Okay, although there are ways to get started with nestjs, but I would highly recommend that you install this CLI globally as an npm package, because it allows you to create a lot of files which are required in a nestjs application. I already have Nest CLI installed on my machine, but I would recommend you go ahead and do that. Now let's look at how we can create our project. So I'll first create a directory, or why don't we remove that and say, let's say quiz manager. Okay, and I'll cd into that. Inside this folder we will have our server side code as well as the client side code. So to get started, you can see the documentation says we can execute a command nest new project name. So we will say, okay, sorry, it's a S, not W. So I'm creating a project with the name server, which is fine because we are going to create a folder which is called quiz manager, and inside that we have our server side code. Now I chose Yarn as a package manager. It is not necessary that you need to do that. I love to work with Yarn because it's a little fast, but if you want to use npm, there is absolutely no problem. Okay, so we have the code. Let's go inside it, and I will open up the code base inside Visual Studio Code. When you have created your nestjs application, if you go inside the folder and do lsal, you will see that there is a git folder inside it. Now obviously I don't need that, so I will remove it, and by doing that, the green thing which was there has gone away. Now the next thing is, let's look at the folder structure. So main.ts is where the application bootstraps. Okay, not much in here, but if you look at the other code, we have a module folder. This is very much like how an Angular code base will look for you. Okay, so it has this @module decorator. These things are called decorators, where we pass certain kinds of metadata to the application to behave in certain ways. And this is how nestjs uses its dependency injection. Okay, so this app module tells us that there is a controller inside this module, which is our app controller. It provides a service, which is the app service, and for now it doesn't import any other module, because the only thing which we have right now is the app module. Now there's a service, it's a class. Okay, you will see that it has one more decorator over here coming from nestjs common, which is called injectable. Anything inside nestjs which you want to provide as a dependency, or some reusable code, you can use the injectable decorator, and then you can use that as a dependency on other modules. So we have a service which has one method, get hello. Okay, and this app service is with the decorator injectable. So why was this done? Let's see. If we go into app controller, so this is one more class, okay, which has one more decorator inside it, which is the controller, and there's one more which is get. But let's get started with the controller first. What does it say? It tells nestjs that this is class of type controller. So a lot of routing related information will be processed by nestjs looking at this controller. Okay, Now you can see we have a constructor in this class which has a private read-only variable app service. Okay. Now this injection, this is where the dependency injection is coming in. This was possible because the app service, right, has an injectable decorator inside it. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been possible. Okay. So app service is available as a private variable inside this class. We have a getHello method which returns a string, and this controller calls this app service getHello method, which is this. And so from this code, what we can expect is that when we start the application, we will get hello world coming from this function. So let's start. Oh, by the way, so how do we know what command to execute? Why don't you go to package.json? This is where everything will be clear. So we have a start, and then we have start dev. Start dev has a watch, which means if I just do start and if I change any file, the changes may not be immediately available on the browser because the app needs to restart. Whereas start dev has a watch flag which suggests that any changes in here will mean the app restarts and the changes will be available. So why don't we do that? npm run dev, start dev. Okay, so everything started and it says Nest application started successfully. Now, how do we know what is the URL? Obviously, it will be localhost, but we can see main.ts says it is listening to port 3000. So why don't we go to our browser and we can see that on the index route, we have hello world. So now we know how the basic scaffolded application is behaving. If we want to play around a little more, what we can do is, let's just say we create one more method. I'll just have one more method called get something, which can also return string. It's a get URL. So I'll have my decorator which says get return. And with this, I need to obviously give a URL. So something will be our new URL. Go back to the browser and we get this back. Obviously, I can do something very similar to this root URL or root method, which is go into the service and paste this. So in here, what we can do is this app service dot get something, right? So obviously nothing will change, but now the controller just calls a service and gets done. So this is how we studied the basic structure of nestjs, what comes once we install the basic boilerplate code. And it's time to now push this code to GitHub so that we don't lose our progress. This is my GitHub organization where I push all the code base for the tutorials that I create. So why don't we create a new repository? The name of our folder was, what was it? Quiz Manager. So we'll have Quiz Manager, nestjs Quiz Manager rather. Okay, it's Amitav Roy. So I want it over here. Obviously a public repository, and then I'll create it. Now I should be in the root folder, the Quiz Manager folder. I'll do git init. If you would have seen, nestjs already comes with a git ignore file, so we can be sure that we can do git add, okay, and do git commit project, and then things change a bit. I'll need to add the origin and then git push origin master. And if I go back here and refresh, we have our server code. So yes, I will also add the link for this repository in the description down below. But yeah, so far what we have done is installed nestjs, and we just created one route to understand how the basic routing and how the basic routing works and how we can return some response from a controller.